Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Stephens. I am the officiant of AZ Weddings by Amy, and I have the pleasure today to chat with DJ Javier Carlos of Sea West Entertainment. And I have had the privilege to actually work with Javier several times now, and he is so much fun. And I love, love how organized you are. That is just like my saving grace because it actually makes me look good. Not just you, but it also makes me and the couple look very, very organized and good. So, welcome, Javier. How are you?
Thank you, Amy. I'm doing great. I'm inside. It's like 110 outside. So as long as I'm inside, I'm going to say I'm cool and I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Well, here's the deal. That actually is a really great start to our conversation here because some of the things that I think a lot of new and younger couples who are recently engaged are kind of thinking
Mhm.
about, okay, we've gotten engaged. Now let's start planning our wedding. And I have had the privilege over the last 8 years um, to remind couples that summer is not always a good time to have a wedding, especially outside. From your perspective, let's just dive in there and talk to me about what happens to equipment in the summer.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've got it from the personal side of me doing my job and from the technical side. So most of the equipment, luckily, that we have as DJs in the audio space, lighting, visual, all of that stuff, they have built-in fans. So they work to a certain extent of, you use them, they get hot, and it kind of works to cool it down. But over 100 degrees, I want to say even 95 degrees as we end, May and begin September, that whole window right there. If it's in the sunlight, and since most of our equipment is black, it just turns into a freaking oven or, just like a hot plate. Don't touch it. Don't put it out there. One big thing that I always told, clients that we were working with, especially when it was for a DJ event, I would say, hey, I can't DJ outside because my MacBook, as soon as I go outside, doesn't even matter if it's on. It just is on fire. And it's just how electronics are made. So I really advise our clients to say, hey, put the DJ inside. We can have music outside. We found some things like dry ice under the computer, but there's really no solution to the blistering sun out here. From a client's perspective, I did do a June wedding here in the Valley. It was last year or 2 years ago. And the bride had a heat stroke and it was horrible. And it was crazy. So obviously not what you want to have on your wedding day, but it's one of those things that, in retrospect and for future couples, it's like, hey, if you're going to get married in the middle of Phoenix in the summertime, be aware if you don't drink water and you're not inside enough, and it was an outdoor ceremony, that something like that could really happen. Not that we want it to happen, but that it can.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting in regards to your equipment getting overheated? I actually did a wedding up north in Prescott,
Mhm.
uh, early June of just this year, and the DJ's had his equipment set up in the shade, but then the sun moved.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
then his equipment was all exposed. And I said, you know what? Go ask the venue if you can put your computer, your laptop into their walk in refrigerator or freezer, whatever they happen to have, and just help cool it down a little bit before we get the ceremony started because he couldn't even get it to turn on. So you do have to get creative every
Mhm.
now and again, don't you?
Yeah, and we have it in our contract as well that we need a shaded area because it doesn't even matter. I mean, it can get really hot any time of the year, really. Here, I feel like we've been blessed this year where that hasn't been the case. It stayed cool for a really long time, but anytime you're in the sunlight here, it just seems like it just turns into a big magnifying glass and everything's catching on fire underneath of it. So,
Absolutely. So one of the other things in regards to June brides,
mhm.
uh, couples, I want to just let you know that's an East Coast thing and a Midwest thing. It is not a Arizona thing. You really don't want to have your wedding in the heat of the summer. All right. So Javier, chat with me a little bit more in regards to like your background, your history. How long have you been a DJ?
Yeah, so I actually began my DJ profession as a middle schooler in 2014, so it really wasn't that long ago. Coming up on 9 years here on Halloween. That was my first event back then. So I've been doing weddings, and this is going to sound crazy as well, since 2015 when I was a freshman in high school. I did my first few weddings with one of our other founders at Sea West Entertainment. So we were a DJ duo. I would play the music and he would MC. We both had a lot of theater experience. So speaking in front of crowds, knowing music, that kind of came second nature. But, since then and after the pandemic, we've really grown a company of, like-minded DJs that are all youthful, young, and really want to shake up kind of some of those stereotypical things that you hear about the DJ industry. So I primarily do weddings as well as the lead for a lot of our corporate event productions. So totally different ball game, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about that later in this call. But over those years, I've really learned like what separates someone that comes up from being a middle schooler and transforming into a true professional and somebody that can guide couples and lead and answer questions and bring up things that people don't think about, like, oh my gosh, let's not do this in the direct sunlight, let's wait till sundown, or push this back a couple months, something like that. So one of the ways, just kind of, even as I see this question pop up here, like how to tell if a DJ is professional, not only does it come down to the number of years, but I think having a conversation with somebody and learning their background and their experience really tells you, because you may speak to anybody in any profession and they'll tell you, oh, I've been doing this for 10 years, but they could be doing that job for 9 years the wrong way. They could be your mechanic and they don't even know how your engine works, but they've been doing it for 10 years. So I don't think just years alone, it's understanding where their experience ties into that number of years. So I'd say, specifically for a DJ, one of the most important ways to tell if they're a professional really goes down to like their process. So when I talk to couples, I tell them how it's like to plan with us, emergency plans that we have in case something were to happen. And then, I kind of tell them about the same story too, of like how the number of weddings I've done, my experience, and, just my life story and how that plays into the role that I play in this company. So I think kind of those three things leading up to, just having a conversation can really tell you if someone's a professional.
I think that's so important. And even from the perspective of, it's not just about your age and the years that you've been doing the work. It's a matter of your ability to even work with the couple and make sure that they feel calm, and working with the other vendors and making sure that that communication in the background. That's one of the things that I loved about talking with you originally. We originally met in 2019, and that was one of the amazing things talking with you about hearing, because in my opinion, I was like, wow, you're so young.
That's what happens. That is the typical conversation.
That's your typical response. Exactly. And so from that understanding of knowing that you have not only that experience and have even had like other mentors and so forth that have been able to guide you and give you a little bit different voice in a professional manner, then you've grown completely, which is amazing. I want to chat with you about your role as a DJ and the ceremony. So I want to hear your side of it, and then we'll talk about maybe my version of that as well. So dive in for me, would you?
For sure. Yeah. I think our side is really like foundationary of like providing what is needed, almost like the tables and chairs for the wedding or the venue. So a lot of couples don't realize that when they go to book a DJ, they just think, oh, I want to have a fun party. So we always ask, hey, do you need music for the ceremony? What about microphones? So what really our role comes down to, playing the music or just providing microphones. We work with some string quartets and they'll play music, and then we'll just be there for the microphones. But when couples, hear that, do I need a DJ? They think, oh no, the music's already covered by the string quartet. And so I say, well, what about, will everybody be able to hear you for 150 people? It's unlikely that they'll be able to hear you outside in the back. So that's kind of a conversation that we have. So to kind of narrow it down, it's really like the speakers, the microphones. And I always tell couples too, hey, what happens if the string people don't show up? We still need music. So if that's ever the case, I always try to find out those same songs, so at least I can have something prepared in case something happens. It's never happened, but you never know. So that's kind of our role. And then how does that tie into how you guys, as officiants come into the ceremony?
Well, so from my perspective, one of the things that I always prefer is when a DJ arrives and has everything set up within at least a minimum 30 minutes before ceremony start time.
Mm-hmm.
I have unfortunately had situations where the DJ is still setting up for the ceremony 5 minutes before the ceremony starts.
Oh, wow.
And that stresses me out.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Because like you got to do a sound check. I always like to make sure everybody knows how to use the microphone that's going to speak on the microphone, because there's a lot of people that when there's not a professional officiant, it's somebody's brother. They think that they could just like do this with the microphone. Like, no, don't do that. Just hold it nice and close.
Exactly. Hold it in one spot and don't put it down at your belly button or eat it like it's a ice cream cone.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, having a proper sound check is super important.
Yes.
I had a question about that. So it's very interesting when it comes to the time that couples pay us for. I think that that's a very important thing too, because I think in that experience, maybe some of those DJs think, hey, they're only paying me to be here at 4 o'clock. And of course I have to set this stuff up, but I start at 4, I clock in at 4. What do you think about that? Does your time in your mind and in your business, does it start when they contract you, like from that 5 o'clock to 5:30 time for the ceremony, or does it also include more time?
Oh, it always includes more time. I don't like to be late. I
Mm-hmm.
had one situation in my 8 years of doing this. I had one situation where the traffic was so backed up. There was a massive accident on the interstate. And I mean, I was like trying to get off on side roads and get there as fast as I could. But what I did was because I had a connection to the DJ, I knew who the
Mm-hmm.
DJ was. I was able to just say, hey, let the venue know, because I had the DJ's contact information handy, not the venue's information. Super handy at that moment while driving. But from that standpoint, being able to just kind of note what's going on. But I am a firm believer. I usually show up depending on where, if it's a venue that I haven't been at and I was not present for the rehearsal, or they didn't host a rehearsal, I usually arrive about 45 minutes beforehand. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, getting there usually about 30 minutes beforehand. And then typically I head out right after signing the marriage license. I don't stick around. I wish I could. There are times that I feel like, hey, I want to party with these people.
That's true too. Or like you smell the food and it's coming by, you're like, oh snap, that smells good. I was always those barbecue weddings too. It's like, oh snap, you smell some good barbecue.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
um, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, to kind of piggyback on that, what we have transitioned to now is we do all of our packages for weddings as unlimited time. As I found just over the course of the years, it always changes. We're either going overtime or things don't start on time, and we're only going to be there for that one wedding for that whole day. So that's kind of how we've priced it so that it makes sense with going over or not. Most of the time it doesn't go longer because people are tired by the end of the night. Everybody always says, oh, we're going to party till 2. And I'm like, you just wait till you've been standing around and taking pictures all day and you are tired and you need to eat and you're the last person to eat for some reason. So
yeah, that's actually a valid point too. I've been in several weddings myself as a bridesmaid through the years, but that is one thing that the bridal party, even though they get their food first, they usually end up not eating it because something comes up. So let's chat a moment about that for the timeline. Is it usually the first dance? Is it like a father-daughter dance or something else that's gone on? I'm trying to remember. It's been a while, but
yeah. So the typical ceremony, it's like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes at the longest. Directly following that would be pictures and cocktail hour. So it's usually an hour. So they have an hour of pictures. Directly following that would be the grand entrance. So if we're making up a fake timeline, say the ceremony's at 4 to 4:30, 4:30 to 5:30 would be cocktail hour. And then grace period of about 15 minutes for grand entrance to get everybody lined up. So we're looking at 5:45 for the grand entrance. Some couples, if they're I feel like if they're younger and they're less traditional, they'll want to do the grand entrance into the first dance, sit down, dinner, and then do toasts. The more traditional way would be grand entrance, sit down, for dinner, of course, and then toast, and then first dance, and then father-daughter, then mother-son, and then whatever other activities that they want to do. I find that those kind of like traditional roles and traditional wedding timelines only come from couples that are maybe getting married for the second time, or they are on the older end of the spectrum, and they're like maybe 40s through 50s and getting married. I've done a lot of weddings in Sun City, which is super cool. Sun Lakes too, and they're 70, 80, and they have this. It's always cool when you see like a different age group, and it's like they've already been married for 30 years, but now they're having the whole wedding. So those are always super fun. But yeah, that's kind of the two timelines that I see.
Yeah, love has no boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, at that point, I'm wondering, like, if you're already up there, what's the point of this? Like, why are you getting married? You're already like married. I don't know. I don't understand that yet, so I haven't been through that life experience. But
it's a legal thing.
Oh, yes, the will. That's right. I don't know if that's the whole reason, but that's right.
For the most part, it's usually the back end story there.
Yeah, legal ramifications and things like that.
That's awesome. So as far as like, I'm curious. I have done several rehearsals where it's the venue, the event planner, the couple, the bride, the bridal party, that kind of thing. And sometimes I have had it where the DJ shows up, and a lot of times, probably more so than not, that the DJ is not there for rehearsal. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you go to rehearsal for your couples, or is that not part of your package?
Yeah, so I really have only met one, or I've heard of one DJ that will do it out of state if they're not busy. And I think that's the thing, is that a lot of weddings are on Saturdays, but our typical DJ schedule would be Thursday, Friday, maybe Sunday. So there's no chance that we'd be able to say to every single wedding that we could go. Additionally, there's not a lot of things besides the ceremony walkout and possibly the grand entrance where, they would need us to be able to play music. So what I tell couples instead is, simply because everybody has a Bluetooth speaker, I say, bring your Bluetooth speaker or just bring your phone with the songs, play the songs, and just kind of time it and walk it out. There's other times, like for the first dance, if they have a custom song or a mashup, or maybe we've done a certain cut to two songs and they want to do that, we'll already know that. Or if I've done some where they get dance lessons for their father-daughter dance, is like a surprise dance. Again, they already have a specific file and you just play that song. It's not a lot to it. So I have been asked, I've been to one rehearsal before, but it was only for the grand entrance. We did it, and then we were just there, and they were doing a bunch of other stuff that wasn't like related to us for this reception, which is totally fine. I mean, but we were just there, and it didn't make sense. That was my first and only experience with that. So that's really the reason why we don't do that. How about for you? Do you go? It makes sense probably for you guys to go to the rehearsal.
So one of the things that, if it's a venue that I'm not familiar with, I absolutely would like to go to rehearsal. Mm-hmm. I give it the option to all of the couples I work with. So if it's a venue that I'm there quite a bit and I know how they work, it's not a big deal at all if I'm not present. It's more for the comfort of the couple. So if it is a venue that I go to regularly, we work together. The venue coordinator and I will work together and allow that process to just unfold for the couple so that they get it. And we do a little bit of practice with the ceremony, especially if there's like a unity component to the ceremony. That's one of the biggest things that I find that most couples kind of are unsure about. They want to do it, but they're not sure that unity process, how that needs to look. And so I'm such a visual person, the way that I explain things, that I try to give them all of those components instead of breaking out everything and doing it right there beforehand. But yeah, especially if it's a new venue that I've not worked at before, I would absolutely love to do either the rehearsal with them, or at least go and meet the venue and talk to them in advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the exact same thing. If we haven't been there before, it's typically nice to know. On Friday, I was up in Sedona, up at a venue, and it was a hike to get in there. and a hike to get out. So I showed up really early because I wasn't sure how it was laid out, and I couldn't visit earlier with the couple because they were from DC. So they were just like, "Hey, just don't show up. I mean, don't go do a site visit because we won't ever be able to meet you there." And I'd driven past it a lot, but I don't know how the wedding was set up. So I just got there 2 hours early. And then I saw that it was a very long hike. And that's usually what it is for us because we've got all this equipment on these carts and moving it around. So I think that that's one thing that would be nice to know on a site visit for us is just where load-in is and where we have to go for things.
How many people do you typically take with you to a wedding?
Yeah, so I like to stick with two, myself and an assistant. So they're there to just help me set up, capture some content for social media, and then the big thing is like I hate when you could just put on music and it could play off like Spotify or it could do its own thing. But I'm like, they're paying us to DJ, so if I ever have to take a break, I know my assistant can play some music, and then we could switch off to if things are pretty like low energy wise and just change up the music. But if it's super small, I could probably go by myself. So we do a lot of other things as well. Some special effects like our sparklers. We have a dancing on the cloud machine, which requires one person to operate. So when we have these other things, even including our photo booth, we have a dedicated tech to run those so that, as the DJ, we can just focus on our job and our role. If we have to MC, focus on what we're there to do. And then we can have somebody else on our team there to run those special effects. So usually it's two, but it can be one.
Okay, I am really observing, coming off of the last few years, this term micro wedding has come up several times over the last few years, but now I think that there's some confusion. So I want to chat with you. Define for me what a small wedding is.
So I would say less than 50 people. That would be a small wedding. The reason why I classify that would be because of the equipment that we have to bring. For 150 people and over, we typically bring more sound. And so more sound equals more people or a bigger space typically. So that's why I kind of say like a smaller wedding would be less than 50 people, because the one that I was at, we have these really nice speakers that are rated for 400 people each. I don't think that that's accurate. That's what the manufacturer says. And they do get very, very, very loud, especially for Sedona. So I could just use one of those speakers I could have used just one of those for the entire thing, even though I didn't do that. It's just like in my head, that's how I would classify that. When it comes to micro weddings, though, we typically are not a part of that because a lot of those micro weddings are even smaller than that, I think. I've done some that are 30 people. I think 20 was the smallest, and it was in a small restaurant, but we still had a regular setup in there. It was still a normal setup like we would do. For most of those elopements that I see with photographers that go out places, there's no AV component with it at all. And maybe if there is, it's like one of those little speakers you can buy at Sam's Club or Costco that has a little light circle ring on it. You connect your phone to it. So that's your DJ right there. Put on that Spotify playlist and you're good to go. You don't need the whole shebang. So
it's so true. So micro wedding to me is 30 and under. So a smaller, quote unquote, smaller ceremony would be 30 and under. Most venues require at least 50 as a minimum. So like if you're going to a venue, most venues will say 50 and more. And if you have 45, you're going to be charged for 50. So I wanted to kind of get your 2 cents worth on defining that as well. And yes, I have done loads of backyard weddings and elopements over the years, and the Bluetooth speaker in the backyard. And my biggest thing is who's going to be responsible for that? Because you as the couple, you can't be responsible for that. you have to perform, and be a part of the ceremony. So
everybody's watching you. Yeah. They usually say in the Facebook groups, when I do see people say that was their option, they just dedicated a friend to control the playlist. They make the playlist. They're not worried about the mixes. We've done some AV production for couples that just want to rent a speaker system and want to do like that side of it, make their own music and not have a DJ because they're not expecting dancing. And I think that's like when people start to consider that or not consider that is like do we care about people being on the dance floor all night? Do we care about people hearing what's going on and understanding what's happening, or is it really just chill? It's we're just vibing out here. There's nothing crazy going on. I think that's like the deciding factor for a lot of couples. And for those that we have done those backyard weddings, I did another one up in Sedona, for example, and that was the case. They just needed to use the microphone, so I set it up so they could just turn it on and turn it off, and then they had their music playing the whole time, and that was it. So,
yeah, it is interesting to me where some people kind of cut corners, but I will say this: don't cut corners with your DJ, because your goal for your wedding is to be a memorable moment, not just for the two of you during the ceremony, but also for your guests, not just in the ceremony, but also for reception. And having that where people talk about it for decades to come, because having that energy and that background is so important. So important. So Javier, chat with me a little bit about how people can get a hold of you. What's the best route to take?
Of course. So, as you see on the banner there, the easiest way is just going to be, remember, DJ C West. Now, you can use that on the browser. Just type that in .com, djcwest.com. You can go to any social media platform: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Threads. It's always going to be DJ C West. That's like our DJ page. If you are interested in AV and other event services, same website will work. On social media, you won't really see any of that. You'll just see our DJ content. But for the most part, DJ C West is all you have to remember. And then you can find us online any way that you search that.
Well, and I want people to be clear as well. We're not talking, we're talking right now about weddings, but for your business, you do corporate events, you do backyards, you do parties, you do high school prom, and you also do business like open houses. I've seen that from your company. So for those of you looking for other opportunities, please know that just like with a good officiant, a great DJ books up far in advance. So if you're planning out for 2024, 2025, get on Javier's list and let him know what's going on and be able to have that conversation with him. So any of you seeing this and you've got questions, feel free to either tag Javier or myself, and we will make sure that we get your questions answered, because that is a big feature of our businesses. We want to make sure that you understand what is the questions that you may need to ask in the future of other people, or maybe you want to talk with Javier directly. Feel free to even drop a comment down here below. Again, my business name is my website, azweddingsbyamy.com is the website link, and you can always reach out to me and see if I'm available for your date. Javier, you're a rock star. I so appreciate your time. I always love working with you and how organized and professional you are. And you keep the rhythm happening. I love it. It's always a great time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy, for having us. I really appreciate it.